Welcome to Ultimate SEO. This module covers site-wide SEO. My name is Leo Wadsworth from leowadsworth.com. In this module, we will be talking about SEO issues which apply to your entire site. Many of these issues may require assistance from your technical team. Some of them offer only minor benefits in terms of SEO, but my philosophy is that if it helps, then it should be done. Note that we will be covering single-page issues in another module. These issues apply across your entire site. Domain name. The exact domain name that you choose for your website is absolutely crucial. I have seen sites rank highly in Google just because of their domain name, with no other SEO effort at all. I recognize that sometimes you have to play with the team that you brought to the game and you won't be able to change the domain name. However, if you possibly can, the domain name is a crucial element in SEO. Put the primary keyword directly into your domain name. Some people go as far as to say that it should be early in the domain name. I do not. However, it absolutely should be included in the domain name. If your domain name is ambiguous, then add a hyphen between the words to force a correct parsing. For example, there is a famous technical question and answer paid forum that uses the URL www.experts-exchange.com. The hyphen in this case forced the correct parsing. Otherwise, Google could see this site as a place called Expert Sex Change, which would be a pretty radical difference in topic matter. Using keywords in the domain name is especially powerful for sites with a local presence. By adding the name of a city or town to the domain name, you give Google a powerful clue about the locality of the business. It is also possible to create several specialized feeder sites that target variations on your niche. Each of these sites can be relatively lightweight, consisting of just a page or two about the variation and referring the users to your primary site. For example, if you have a localized site, you might set up feeder sites with the names of surrounding towns in their domain names. Other domain issues. There are two other issues that can affect your standings in the search engine rankings. The first of these is the age of the domain. Google likes to see sites that have been around for a while. I imagine that they are trying to weed out fly-by-night sites. In general, the older a site is, the better. However, there is one exception. A brand new site seems to get some visibility in the search engine rankings. This honeymoon seems to last for about 6 months. While it can be hard to control how old your domain is, this next factor you have absolute control over. It appears that Google gives a bit of extra weight to sites that have signed up to keep the domain name active for a long time. In other words, it likes to see domain expirations that demonstrate a plan to be around for a while. You'll notice, of course, that I am using words such as it seems to, or apparently, or it appears. Just to restate it, I don't control Google, and I do not have exact information on their algorithms. On the other hand, I'm giving you the best information I have, and I have strong confidence that using this information will produce great results for you, just like it has for my clients. Site organization. The way your site is organized can have a specific and drastic impact on your standing in the search results. It is best to have a good, clean site organization with a limited number of sub-areas. When designing your site, it is good to have your sub-areas support the overall keyword target for the site. For example, if you create a site about widgets, then you might use sub-areas such as history of widgets, or type of widgets, or where to buy widgets. You want your most important information to be within 2 clicks of your home page. Statistically, you lose audience share every time you ask them to click. Fewer clicks mean more of your audience sees all of your content. There is one exception to this, and this is where a sub-area of your primary website is really a microsite unto itself. This can be hard to pull off successfully, but when done right, it can really work. The next part of site organization is to make sure that your pages, have links to one another. These internal links pass around link juice almost like external links. Google likes this because it implies that you have more information to share on a particular topic. However, don't put a big block of internal links at the bottom of every page, thinking that will give you the perfect interior page linking. Google is watching for over-optimization, and this would fall into that category. Subdomains and subdirectories. A subdomain comes before your primary domain name. Example, subdomain.mysite.com. A subdirectory comes after your domain name, such as mysite.com/subdirectory. Google basically treats subdomains as completely separate websites. It is best to use subdomains for content that is less related to your other content. My example is a widget website. Different classes of widgets with radically different designs would best be handled by different subdomains, such as industrial.widget.com and commercial.widget.com. If something is completely unrelated, you're probably better off with a different domain. When content is more closely related, use subdirectories. The subdirectories feed into the overall topic of the site. My example is different colors of widgets. Using this kind of linking structure will benefit in how each of the pages are ranked. Content. There are certain characteristics that apply to content across your entire site. The first of these is to be sure that you do use text, not graphic images or Adobe Flash, for navigation and for links. If you have a link on an image, it is good to have corresponding text. It is also good to put information about your link within the alt tag of the image. Google cannot read text that is hidden inside or on images or in Flash. There are some hints that Google is trying to work around this. Right now, they just can't do it. Because of this, you want to put your information into text that you know Googlebot can read. Note that Google itself has sponsored a technology for putting different fonts on your website. This can give you that special look that your graphics designer is claiming that you must have, while preserving the text for SEO purposes. A while back, Google changed its algorithm to account for freshness. It gave extra weight to content that has been published more recently. This makes sense in all sorts of ways. Quite often, when I'm searching for information on a particular topic, I want to know the latest and greatest information. My strong recommendation is that you provide a steady stream of fresh, unique content. Consistency and quality is important. Yes, this requires a significant commitment to your website. At AOL, I worked with a large number of publishers. Some were publishing rarely, while others were going crazy publishing very frequently. We found that if you update your site once a month, you will get a certain level of traffic. If you update your site once a week, you will get more traffic, but not as much as you might think. However, if you consistently update your site once a day or even more often, you will see your traffic explode over time. Now I'm going to share a personal pet peeve that, as far as I know, does not affect your SEO. Please do not play video with sound or audio automatically when the page loads. Set it up so that the user must click on some sort of play to hear audio. There are lots of times when people don't want to have audio playing. The most common of these is when they are at work. They may come by your site during a break and then have to have a mad rush to get away from your site because it is playing audio that everybody in the office can hear. If they knew in advance that you were going to play audio, they could put on headphones. Again, please don't play sound automatically. Analytics. The way your site behaves is another component that Google takes into account when preparing the search results. There are three primary attributes that Google uses. The first attribute is your bounce rate. The second attribute is the amount of time that people spend on your site. The third attribute is the overall speed of your site. Google Analytics and the Google Webmaster Tools measure and report on these attributes. The bounce rate measures how many people come to your site and leave immediately without visiting other pages on your site. When you first look at this rate, you need to understand that this is extremely common on the internet. It doesn't mean that you have a bad site just because some people look no further. What you should be looking at is the percentage of people that leave. Google Analytics reports those percentages for you. As a general rule of thumb, 70% is a bad bounce rate, 40% is a good bounce rate. As a goal, you should try to keep your bounce rate under about 50%. The second attribute is the amount of time people spend on your site. This varies depending on how engaging your content is and how much content you have. Ideally, you want people to come to your site and stay a while looking at different pages. Speed of your site. Google wants people to be happy with the users that they find using Google's search engine. The overall speed of the website, in other words, how fast it displays its pages, is a crucial component of the usability of the site. If your site is slow, then it is likely to get penalized in the search results. I suggest you check and analyze your site's speed. A combination of Google Analytics and Google Webmaster Tools will give you this information from Google's perspective. I highly recommend the website webpagetest.org. This site will look at your site using servers from all around the entire world and will tell you exactly how fast your pages are being displayed. The reports from this site will go into excruciating detail about exactly what is happening on your pages. Another great part about this site is it's free to use. The YSlow add-on for Firefox and the developer tools built into the Chrome browser are both additional ways to determine exactly how your page is rendering. Why is my site slow? Okay, so at this point, you have the initial data about the speed of your site. Quite often, this data is not as good as you want it to be. Careful examination of the reports can reveal not just the speed of your site, but also the specific elements that are causing it to be slow. By far, the most common reason for a slow site is putting too much onto the page. This is especially true regarding images. Too many images, or images that take up huge parts of the page, is a guaranteed recipe for producing a slow site. It is also possible for tabbed areas on the page to create layers that slow down your site. There are two attributes concerning images that you should know. The first one involves the size of the image as measured in pixels. The second one involves the size of the image in terms of the image file size on your hard disk. Your picture should be resized before you publish it, such that the size in pixels matches the ultimate size you want to see on your web page. While it is possible to rescale an image in the browser, the end result is that the user downloads the entire high-resolution image even when you're displaying a small thumbnail. The file size can vary drastically, even for images of the same pixel size. More significant image manipulation programs allow you to change the level of quality within the saved file. Most of the time, it is possible to reduce the size of the file without any visible changes in the displayed image. JPEG, for example, can almost always produce a 6:1 reduction in file size compared to the raw file size with no visible changes to the image. Another reason your site could be running slow is related to your hosting company. It is common to run into problems, especially with low-cost, unlimited hosting plans. In such plans, the hosting company is putting more than one website on a particular server. This creates a situation where you may have too many sites on the same server, or a situation where another site on your server gets especially busy and soaks up the available resources. In such cases, you can often complain and get some resolution to the problem. However, over the long haul, unlimited hosting will not provide the type of guaranteed performance that you need to run a business. Beware of believing the, quote, unlimited, unquote, promises. Web hostings do the best they can, but they still need to stay in business. There is a great deal of variation between web hosting companies as to their performance and reliability. While this can change quite quickly, I currently recommend GatorHost.com for my clients' websites. Over the long term, as your business grows, it is likely that you will need to move to a more robust hosting plan within your current provider, or will need to move to another provider. Again, there are many different options out there to choose from. For extremely high-end hosting, I currently recommend Rackspace.com. They're very good, but very expensive. Many people run WordPress for their websites. While this is a fine platform, there are some things you need to watch carefully when tuning your site for speed. WordPress supports a wide variety of plugins which provide additional functionality for your site. However, running too many plugins is a guaranteed way to cause your site to slow down. I also recommend you install and use one of the caching plugins to speed up your site. Sitemaps. A sitemap is a file or page that contains links to all of the pages in your website that you want the general public or the search engines to find easily. Using a sitemap will help both humans and Google to find what they are looking for. I recommend that every site have a sitemap page. Quite often this page is referenced on just about every page on the site as a link in the footer. The major search engine companies have agreed on a format for sitemap files as well. The standard that is now used by just about every possible search engine can be found at sitemaps.org. It specifies using a file called sitemap.xml that you put in the root directory of your website. Quite often, there are tools that can create this file for you automatically. Controlling Googlebot. In general, you want to be able to control which pages are included or excluded in the search results. Sitemaps are a way to tell Google's software, called Googlebot, where you want it to look. There is another file you need to understand called robots.txt. This file, which is also put in the root directory, can tell Googlebot and its kin where not to look. Both sitemap.xml and robots.txt are honored by pretty much all of the search engines. For my client, I recommend that they sign up for and use Google's free Webmaster Tools. These tools give a good amount of information about how Google views your site. This information includes what Googlebot found in terms of sitemap.xml and robots.txt. For example, it will report that there are pages in your sitemap file that it couldn't find. This tool also gives you great information about Google's view of your robots.txt file, the speed of your site, and much more. Valid HTML and CSS. In the background, behind the visible web pages, is HTML code and CSS styling information. These files have a very specific syntax that they are supposed to use. In general, it is always better for your site to follow this syntax properly. This is called having valid HTML and CSS. Having valid HTML and CSS helps your website to display properly on a wide range of browsers. Unfortunately, this is not a complete panacea. There is enough variation between the browsers to drive web designers insane. However, it does help. Having valid HTML and CSS also helps your site to continue to display pages properly, even as browser makers continue to change their browsers. In many cases, having valid HTML and CSS also means that your site will run faster, because browsers are not processing invalid code or links, which can take more time to process. There are validators for both HTML and CSS that can check your site's pages to let you know if there are any issues to be addressed. For HTML, I recommend the validator at validator.w3.org. For CSS, I recommend the validator at jigsaw.w3.org/css-validator. These validators will identify both errors, where your code is wrong, and warnings, items that may not have any impact on the rendering of your site. Some people say that this is a significant issue for Google, that Google uses this as a quality and ranking issues for websites. I have not seen conclusive information yet that proves that this affects ranking, but it is still good to address. I consider it most likely that a few errors are fine, but that too many errors may affect the way Google sees your site. I recommend that after using the validators, you try to fix any errors that come up. I would recommend that you also try to fix the warnings, but you can ignore them without much of a problem. In any case, it is a good idea to have valid HTML and CSS.